Hello everyone, how are we all doing today? Let me know if you guys need any more volume for anything, but I think we should all be good. So yeah, hello everyone. This week we're going to do something a little bit fun. We're going to talk about some guitars and some sentimental guitar related stories. So one thing that comes up a lot on other videos, on socials, and basically anywhere else I've spoken to some of you guys before is I get asked a lot about some of my favourite guitars. So I thought today I would come on the live stream and tell you about my 5 favourite guitars and share some stories behind them. But I want you guys to do the same thing. So in the chat, don't be shy, let me know what your favourite guitars are and share some cool sentimental guitar stories behind them as well. So I can see Holzer kicking things off over there in the chat. Hey Holzer, how's it going? The rest of you guys, don't be shy, get things going over there in the chat as well. I want to hear some of your guitar stories too. So, I'm going to kick off with this thing. So this is a guitar that has been used in quite a few videos. I mentioned when I posted about this live stream that some of the guitars I'm going to show on the stream are guitars that you may have seen in videos before. And you may also have some guitars appearing in the stream that you've never seen before, because I have guitars that I use a lot for videos, but I also have guitars that are sentimental to me as well. Things that I've owned for, you know, forever, that I don't really show on YouTube, but I probably should. But I thought this would be a really cool place to talk about some of those things. So the first one I've got in my hands is this Strat that you probably have seen this in a few videos before. It's been, you know, it's been used, it's cropped up a few times. This is an early 80s Tokai Strat, and this is actually probably the best Strat I have ever owned. It's a Japanese Strat from, I believe, 1982 or 83, I can't remember the exact year. I think it is that there was like a crossover period where they changed some of the spec. If you saw the video I did for Reissue Sound pickups last summer at some point, this was the guitar featured, and I upgraded the pickups from the original Tokai pickups to the Reissue Sound ones. So yeah, this sort of took top of the pile as, you know, my favourite Strat that I've ever owned. I had a bit of a love-hate thing with Strats. I always loved how Strat players sounded, but I never found a Strat that I really loved. So when I finally found this thing, it was actually an accident that I got my hands on this, and it pretty much became my favourite Strat straight away. It was actually a friend of mine selling this thing for, I can't even remember how much I paid for it, not much, and I was just looking for a Strat for a couple of gigs, and I wasn't actually sold on the colour at first. I didn't really want a sunburst Strat, I wasn't looking for a sunburst Strat, and he brought it to a gig to show me, and as soon as I played it I just knew, you know, that's a guitar that I have to own. So yeah, you may have seen this one around before. It's obviously a Tokai, as I said. It's not a Fender Strat. This is, I believe it's 40 years old this year. If not this year, 40 years old next year. Obviously it's got some wear and tear on it. You can see there's some age-related wear and tear above the pickguard and on the top, most of which was done by me because this was pretty heavily gigged from the day I got it. There's some of the usual wear and tear on the back as well, and on the bottom. You know, it's a 40-year-old guitar. It's a Strat. It's been used, it's been abused, and yeah, it's definitely one of my top 5 guitars. Sentimentally, this one does mean a lot to me because it was the first vintage guitar I ever bought as well. So with this being 40 years old, yeah, it was the first one that I sort of got my hands on. And I think I've been in possession of this guitar now for, I think, 6 years. So yeah, you guys have definitely seen this one a few times because, you know, as I said, it's been around the block quite a bit. So yeah, that's really the whole point of this stream, is for me to talk about some of my favourite guitars, share some of the stories behind them with you guys, and then, you know, I want to hear some of your stories as well. So I was asking on Instagram yesterday about what your favourite guitars are and what the story is behind them. So if you've got a favourite guitar that means something to you, let me know in the comments, or in the chat even. let me know the story behind your favourite guitars in the chat, because I think it's always interesting to find out why guitar players, you know, hold on to certain instruments or why they gravitate towards them. So yeah, that's a little bit of a background on this thing. For anyone interested in the spec side of it, it's a pretty standard Strat spec. It's, you know, it's the 25.5-inch scale. What is really interesting about these Tokais is these are the early Japanese ones. These are, I believe it's a like-for-like replica of a 63 Fender Strat. So we've got the super thin veneer board. It's got the real heavy 7.25-inch radius fretboard. So it's not really a speedy playing guitar. It's more of the vintage Strat vibe. The frets are slowly on the way out because, you know, 40-year-old frets, they're gonna succumb to the wear and tear of gigging life after a while. So it could probably do with a refret at some point. And other than the fact that I changed the pickups on this, it's pretty much all original. The only other things that I know have been changed are the bridge saddles. Somewhere in the guitar's history, someone swapped them out for some graphite ones. I think they're Graphtec. And the nut has been changed at some point to a synthetic bone nut. But other than that, and obviously the obvious pickup change that I know that I've done, and the pickguard change, everything else, all the other electronics are original. I swapped the pickguard just because I like the look of a tortoise shell guard on a sunburst body. But yeah, it's a great guitar. This is definitely one of my most sentimental guitars. I think it's always a fun topic because, you know, it's like if your house was on fire, which ones would you grab? So this is definitely high up on that pile. I never saw myself as a Strat player, but because I really, really liked this guitar when I first got it, that completely changed my mind and somewhat converted me to a Strat player. So yeah, as I said, for anyone who's just joined, talking about guitars, favourite guitars and their sort of stories today. So if you've got a favourite guitar and a bit of a sentimental story behind it, throw it in the chat. So I'm going to play this thing a bit now, so you guys can hear what this thing sounds like. You've heard it in a few videos anyway, but I'm just going to play a little bit now. It's clean so far, going into the Blackstar Studio 10 6L6. So I'm just going to play on the clean channel a little bit. I think it's in tune. I should probably check that before I start strumming away, just to make sure we're not going to get any nasty surprises, because I haven't actually tuned this guitar today, but it is in tune. That's the good thing with this. This is super stable. I did block the trem out as well, as you can see on the back, just because when I got this guitar, I wasn't really using Strat trems, and because this is one of the old Japanese imports, the whammy bar is a different thread size, and I just didn't have one of those thread sizes, so the easy thing to do was block the trem off because I didn't need it. And I have other guitars with trems that I use for that purpose. So yeah, I'm just going to play this on the clean channel for a little bit so you guys can hear it. Even though it is all single coils, there is a really nice bite, but also a warmth to these pickups as well. These pickups are, as I said, from a buddy of mine from Reissue Sound Pickups, and they are called Redwoods, and they're basically a sort of 63 pre-CBS Strat style. The original Tokai pickups are in this were great, but the Redwoods from Reissue Sound are night and day different. So yeah, I'm a big fan of these pickups. Hey, Basement Guitar Superstar, how you doing? Finally able to catch a live stream. Good to see you here. What pickups did you swap to? Good timing with that question, Alza. I literally just talked about those pickups. It's the Reissue Sound Redwoods. And there is a demo on my channel of those pickups as well. They're wound in the States by one guy. He runs a really cool pickup company. I was going to say pickup showroom. It's not a showroom, it's one guy with a company. He makes some really cool pickups, and he also did me a set of PAF style pickups for one of my other guitars as well. So yeah, I can't recommend his stuff enough. When I spoke to him about picking the right pickups for this guitar, I mentioned that I play a lot in the in-between positions on the Strat, so like the position 2 and position 4, and that's why he recommended this set to me, because it has that chime. So as you'll hear now. So yeah, I play a lot in those sort of position 2 and position 4 things. So these pickups, I needed them to have that chime. Sometimes Strat pickups can get a little bit out of phasey in those positions and lose some of the volume. But yeah, he did a great job making sure that these ones were quite balanced in all 5 positions. Krenar is here as well. Hey Krenar, how you doing? How is everything going on your end? I love that guitar you were playing in that video the other day. That is such a great guitar. Basement Guitar Superstar, not sure about you, but I have had a big influx of trolls recently. I've not. I've had 1 or 2. I think every channel attracts a handful from time to time. I do find that it goes in phases, so sometimes I'll have more trolls than other times. But yeah, usually it's pretty chilled. But I do, like anyone, I do occasionally attract a handful of characters to the comment section. But yeah, that's part of YouTube life, I suppose. So I'm gonna kick on a little bit of drive now. I've got the Wampla Gearbox, and I'm gonna put on the Klon side just with a little crunch so we can hear how the pickups sound with a bit of drive. So again, I'm using the bridge pickup there on its own, and usually you wouldn't use a bridge pickup on a Strat on its own, but these pickups are wound in a way that it's slightly less bright. There's not as much sort of ice pickiness to that bridge pickup. So that was one of the requirements when I had the set made, was that I wanted to be able to use the bridge pickup with a bit of grit, and not have it sort of you know, too piercing. So yeah, this is definitely one of my favourite guitars. Definitely my favourite Strat. It's not the Strat that I gig all the time, because when I gig a lot with the Strat, I tend to prefer a modern style Strat for that. But as a sentimental guitar, this is the one. So there's a couple of guys kicking off in the comments over there. So for you guys in the comments that you might not have seen the start of the stream, the whole point of today is I'm going to be talking about 5 of my favourite guitars and sharing some stories behind those things. And I want you guys in the chat to do the same thing. So if you've got a favourite guitar that has a bit of a cool story, let me know what that is in the chat. Krenar is doing well. Hope you are as well. I'm doing good. Thank you very much, Krenar. Anyone who likes jazz music, Krenar has a fantastic channel. He's an insanely good player, and he should have way more subs than he does. So yeah, go check his stuff out as well. He's a great jazz player and a really cool guy to hang out with. John, that Strat sounds fantastic. Thank you very much, John. Yeah, I love this Strat. This is the Strat that converted me to a Strat player. Obviously, it has that John Mayer visual, because that's pretty much what got me into Strats. But as soon as I played this thing, yeah, it changed my mind completely. I never owned a great Strat. until I got this. I just couldn't find one that I loved. But Tokai converted me. Tone Hatch guitar pickups, sounds great. Yeah, these pickups are great. The Strat's great. Tone Hatch pickups also make some really cool pickups. I've got some of his in another Strat, and my Telly has some Tone Hatch pickups as well. So if you've seen me playing my purple Strat on the channel, or my blonde Telecaster, those are some Tone Hatch pickups as well. And Tone Hatch stuff is insanely affordable as well. So anyone looking for some really cool hand-wound pickups, go check out Tone Hatch. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what sentimental and cool guitar stories you guys have got. So that's my Strat. I think I'll move on to the next guitar now. What should we talk about next? I'm going to talk about this guitar next. So this guitar, now this one is a guitar that has seen a bit of action. So you can expect some noise and some crackle from this thing, because this needs a lot of work at the moment. But this is probably, as far as sentiment goes, this is probably number one in terms of the sentimental guitars that I own. So this came up very briefly on the first live stream we did, when someone asked me what my favourite guitar was. And I don't think I could pick a favourite guitar as such, because I love all the guitars in my collection. But if I had to pick a guitar that was the biggest sentimental piece of my collection, this would be it. So this is an Epiphone Les Paul. And I know, you know, Epiphone as a brand get a lot of bad reputation, and, you know, there's a lot of things that people say about them, but this is a really, really good guitar, and probably my favourite Les Paul that I've ever played or owned, even though it's not an expensive one. So this guitar I've owned since 2003, so this is one of the longest serving guitars in my collection. I've owned this now for just under 20 years, and this was my first proper guitar. So when we talk about, you know, first guitar, second guitar, whatever, this was the first really good guitar I bought. So my first guitar was, you know, like everyone, one of those cheap starter Strats that always sound awful and play awful. But when I got this thing, that is when I really started to find myself as a player, and obviously having a good guitar helped a lot. So at this point, Epiphone are making guitars in Korea, and the Korean Epiphones, for anyone who has ever tried those, you know, they are just a step above the rest. So this is actually a really, really great Les Paul, even though the price tag is completely nowhere near the way this thing plays or sounds. So as I said, I've owned this for the best part of 20 years. So when I got this guitar, I think I'd been playing maybe like 2 years. This guitar was pretty much with me through everything I've ever done. So from, you know, my first gig and my first band, writing my first songs, going on my first tour, this guitar was literally the guitar that I played. And anyone that has known me as long as that always remember when I got this thing, because I always wanted a Les Paul because a lot of my favourite players played them, but everyone I knew with a Les Paul had a Sunburst one. So when I saw this guitar in a finish that used to be called transparent blue, but we'll talk about that in a second, I just thought, that's so cool, it's so different, so I'm going to get that. This bit here, where the pickguard used to be, that is what the original colour of the guitar should be, or the colour of the guitar should be that. But as you can see, this guitar is multiple different colours. And the reason for that is, when I got the guitar, it was before live music venues had LED stage lighting. So back then, I say back then, it was 20 years ago, but a lot has changed since then. When I started gigging, you still had the big par cans with real bulbs in, stages were super, super hot, the bulbs were super bright, and basically they were so bright that they would discolour the finish. So I had a scratch plate on this, hence this bit, but what happened was the guitar started to discolour because I was gigging all the time with it when I started touring, and obviously hot lights, lots of playing, you slowly start to wear through the original finish. At some point, the finish faded to this color. So if I can just catch the light right, you can see there's like a different shade here. The guitar faded to this color, and then I sort of went through a phase where I covered the guitar in stickers and different things that I found over the years, and then continued to tour with it and continued to gig with it, and then obviously it continued to fade. So the guitar faded to this color, which whatever we would call this, it's kind of like a greeny sort of color. What color would you guys say that is? And then eventually I took the stickers off, so we had this patch here of the middle fading, and then I took the pickguard off and it was this color. So yeah, it's a bit of a Frankenstein in terms of color right now. Aha, we're back. Sorry about that, guys. For some reason, my camera decided to switch itself off, even though it shouldn't have. And I have no idea why. But yeah, we're back now, so apologies for that. I have no idea why that happened. The magic of technology, eh? But yes, where was I? I was saying that the finish faded loads over the years under different stage lights. Obviously, it's no longer the original colour. That Epi has a beautiful patina to it. Patina is one way to describe it, abuse is another way. So it's, but yeah, I love I kind of like the visuals on this, even though it's not really, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not your sort of standard colour, because obviously it's experienced a lot over the years. So yeah, it's really cool. I'm really, yeah, I do like this guitar. It's got a very special place to me. Is that finish still in production? Yes, it is. Epiphone currently, let me pull this up and show you guys, or at least it was in production like a couple of years ago. I think maybe you can still get it. Let me switch over to my website side. So this is kind of what the guitar looked like when I first got it. So it was this kind of colour. Transparent blue. They did change it slightly. That looks very much like the way I remember this guitar looking. Maybe a little bit more blue in the center. I kind of wish I had photos from when I got the guitar, because it was maybe not that vibrant, but yeah, it was a very vibrant blue when I first got it. Obviously there is a current version of this in circulation, which is that. Well, this isn't available at the moment, so perhaps not. Perhaps they don't make this colour anymore. I know it was available a few years ago, but Epiphone and Gibson change their colour range all the time, so maybe for some reason they took this one out of circulation. But yeah, that's what this one is. This is a guitar that has a lot of history. It's been around the block a few times. I've done a lot of touring and a lot of gigs with this. So the frets I've actually had to have refretted at some point because I completely wore them out. It was pretty much like a fretless guitar at one point. And obviously, as you can see, the back and the sides have seen their fair share of action as well. So there's plenty of dents and chips and bumps and whatnot in there. There's loads of dents in the back of the neck, which you can't really see on the camera. But yeah, this to me is the Les Paul. So this obviously sounds its best with a bit of drive, so let's have a listen. You're probably going to hear some crackling in the pots because the pots are pretty old on this. you could hear a little bit of crackling there as I turned the volume down. It definitely needs a bit of a service. All the electrics in this thing, other than the pickup switch, are actually original. So all the pots are pretty much 20 years old. The pickup's 20 years old. It's had a few little changes over the years, like I put a bridge with roller saddles on it. Because when I got this guitar, I was always playing in hard rock bands, and the original Tune-o-matic saddles were quite sharp, and we used to wear our guitars super low, and obviously when you're playing really aggressively, I would always cut the side of my hand open. So I changed it to roller saddles, sort of as, you know, damage control. And I kept breaking this from, again, just playing aggressively and essentially punching the pickup switch and snapping it a bunch of times. But yeah, this guitar has seen some action. So what have we got going on in the comments? Opinion: electric hollow body guitar under $500. 500 US. Electric hollow body. You can't go wrong with Epiphone Dots. Those are pretty solid guitars. I would also check out some of the Ibanez stuff. I don't know the exact model numbers, but Ibanez do some really great semi-hollow stuff in the sort of, in the UK, I guess we're talking like 350 to 400 pound range. They do some great stuff in that price range, so check some of those out as well. Also, Tokai. You're probably not going to find them in many stores, but there's a guitar called the Tokai ES60, which I picked one up for about £350 in the UK. Those are great semi-hollow styles as well. Or if you want fully hollow, then you'd need to look at, let's say, like an Epiphone Casino. I think you could pick one of those up for probably about 400. Those are fully hollow. And again, Ibanez do loads of different ones. I can't really remember any model numbers, but yeah, check out some of the Ibanez catalogue because there's bound to be some cool stuff in there. Okay, next guitar. I'm going to go for this one. So now we're going to go off on a completely different tangent. This is another old guitar, and this is quite a sentimental guitar to me, even though I've not owned it that long. I got this guitar actually last year, at the start of last year actually. This was an impulsive eBay purchase because I always loved 80s bands when I was growing up. So when I was growing up, it was 80s rock. I was crazy about, you know, Poison and Cinderella and all the other cool 80s hair metal bands, and they were all playing Kramers and Charvels. And I've owned a few different Super Strat style guitars over the years, but I never owned a real one. And by real, I mean this is a 1985 Kramer. So I picked this up on eBay for like, I think I paid like £200 for it, which is pretty much nothing. The guitar was in quite a bad way when it arrived. I actually did a video the day this arrived of me taking out of the box basically and finding out what I'd bought. Basically testing the theory that just because you could buy a vintage guitar for cheap doesn't mean you should. But I bought it anyway because I wanted one, and I thought, you know, it's going to be a fixer-upper. So this was my first vintage 80s Super Strat in a really weird colour, which is sort of, in some lights, like in the camera right now, it kind of looks silver. And if I tilt it in the right way, there's sort of a gold and a green to it as well. So I don't really know what we would call this colour, but I like the colour. It's interesting. I like it more in person than I thought I would. So this is, to me, the real deal when it comes to 80s guitars. I love 80s things, 80s guitar sounds and 80s guitar players. So we've got Floyd Rose. This is not original, this has been changed. I don't know what these pickups are, whatever one's Kramer we're using at that point. It's a Japanese made Kramer. I spoke to a guy I know that works for someone who works at Kramer, and he did some checks on this for me, and it turns out at this point, 1985, the necks on these were made by ESP, which I thought was quite cool. So yeah, this is a great playing guitar, and yeah, very, very good value for money. It's pretty much all original from what I can tell. Other than the Floyd Rose, I don't think anything's been changed. And the only reason I know the Floyd has been changed is because it's a Floyd Rose Special, which didn't come around until like 20 years ago. It should have had a Floyd Rose 2 on it. And I actually own another Kramer, same model, but 1988, and that has the proper Floyd Rose on it. So this Floyd has been changed at some point, but this is the one out of the two that I prefer. So yeah, let's hear some 80s tones. And that's always the fun thing with 80s guitars. As you saw then, I touched the volume part slightly and it cut out completely because, again, it's 40 years old. It needs some new electronics fitted. So you can do all those fun 80s tricks on it as well. And yeah, I kick on a little bit of chorus then as well, because who doesn't love a bit of chorus on an 80s guitar? I really like, I like the 80s thing. I always loved 80s stuff growing up. So yeah, having a real deal Super Strat was a big thing for me. As I said, it needs a bit of TLC. The volume part is a little bit iffy, as you'd expect from a guitar that's 40 years old. This has a coil split. When they used to switch them, the coil split obviously only affects the bridge pickup. Like with all 80s guitars in that classic sort of style, it's got the angled bridge pickup as well, which I think is quite cool. The angled bridge pickup is nice because it gives a little bit more articulation on the high strings. So when you're playing lead, you get a little bit more bite from the top end. And the bridge pickup doesn't have a tone control either, so the tone controls are only for the single coils. So even though this is a very 80s guitar, it does cleans very well. You can hear the crackle on this thing. And obviously you can hear it cutting in and out because the volume part's dodgy. So yeah, lots of 80s fun with this thing. I've had a lot of fun with this guitar since I got it, but I do need to do some work to it now to, you know, get it a bit more up to date. Okay, what have we got going on in the comments? I'm sure I've seen a blueberry burst. That's a mouthful, but it's a bit more purple. Yeah, the blueberry burst Les Pauls are, as you said, they're a bit more like a blue to a purpley burst, whereas my one that I talked about was blue to blue before it faded to a greenish sort of colour. Philip Michael, sounds great, nice chorus. Yeah, I do love a bit of chorus. It's not an effect I use all the time, but when I want to do something very 80s sounding, I'm straight away going to the chorus. What happened to the Westone brand of guitars? That's a good question. My first guitar was a Westone Thunder 2A. I'm pretty sure a friend of mine used to have one of those. Yeah, they did. A Westone Thunder. So this is the Westone Thunder 1. The 2A. There it is. So as far as I know, they've just become one of those brands that sort of went just out altogether. So that, I'm guessing, is the 2A. A friend of mine had a similar one, but I think it had a bolt-on neck and a slightly different headstock, if I remember correctly. I'm sure he had like a 6-a-side headstock, which I don't know if they have any pictures of. But I'm sure his was a Thunder. It's kind of like that, like the 1A. It was that colour. Oh, and it had that headstock. So whatever that headstock is, he had that headstock, but on the Thunder style guitar. Or maybe it was one of those, I can't remember. But he had a Westone guitar anyway. But yeah, they're really good guitars. I don't actually know what happened to them. I think, yeah, probably just went out of business. I think you can still pick them up on eBay from time to time, though, for pretty good prices. I have seen them floating around the second-hand market. Like a lot of the old sort of 80s Japanese guitars, they can fluctuate in price. So sometimes they can be quite pricey. Other times you can pick them up for, you know, next to nothing. The Westone Spectrum, that's it, yeah. It wasn't the Thunder, sorry. It was the Spectrum he had in a natural finish with the 6-a-side headstock. Yeah, that's exactly the one. I traded the Thunder 2A before I knew if it was good or not. Traded it for an 86 Fender Japan 57 Reissue Strat. That's not a bad guitar to trade it from, though. Personally, I'd probably say you traded up there. So I think you probably got the better end of that deal. Not that the Westone Thunder is a bad guitar, but I think obviously getting an 80s Japanese Strat is a good trade, because those 80s Japanese Strats are now pretty sought after, and yeah, people seem to be paying good money for them. So if you've still got that, that's probably worth a bit more now than the Westone would be in terms of resale value. What was the funk song you played just now on the Kramer? It wasn't really anything. It was just like I was literally just jamming some chords. So I was playing, let me refresh my memory. So I'm just sort of doing this thing where I'm playing a B dominant 7 chord. I'm going to try and explain this the best I can now, but I'm playing it in the thumb and triad sort of form. So I'm playing like, I'm essentially barring the 7th fret of the D, G and B. I'm playing the 7 on the low E with the thumb, which gives me a minor 7 chord, and I'm hammering on to the 8 on the G. Then I'm playing this triad here, which is an E major triad, which is the 9 on the D, G and B. And then I'm just sort of grooving on it really, and then going back to the B note here on the 9th fret of the D string. I'm just adding different kind of muted articulations as well. So if you play it without the muted stuff, it's pretty much just... It's sort of a blues thing as well. You could play blues that way. But if you add some funky rhythm to it and some muted articulations. And then I'm just jumping up to, I'm just hitting the, I'm not sure what this chord is, but it's the 10 on the B and E and the 9 on the G. think it's like an extension of it's an E sus4 with a D note in the top. I can't remember the name of that chord, but that's pretty much it. But it's sort of, yeah, B dominant 7, B minor pentatonic kind of groove. I quite like to find little grooves within simple shapes like that, because you can get a lot of mileage out of it, and it's quite easy to play like some lines around it as well. Because it's sort of within a pentatonic sort of box. I'm looking to learn funk. Artists you would recommend. Do you know what? I'm not really that much of a funk fan, even though I do play stuff like that from time to time, but funk isn't really a style of music I sit down and listen to. I can see Anton has recommended Nile Rodgers. Obviously Nile is a sort of a go-to hero when it comes to funk playing. I think in terms of modern funk players, Corey Wong is a great one to check out. His technique is just insanely good. My leaning to that style of playing sort of comes from blues, so I would kind of view that as like something I wouldn't play as funky if I was playing a blues jam, but that sort of phrasing is, to me in my head, a little bit blues. I am though, if you're looking to learn funk, I have a guitar course, and there's a link in the description, and I'm doing a 7-day free trial on that, and there's some funk modules in there, and there's an entirely new curriculum coming very soon in full 4K. I'm literally in the process of editing 180 new lesson videos to revamp the whole thing, but there's a lot of funk stuff, especially in the new version of the course that I'm going to be launching in the next few months. There's plenty of funk material in there as well. Still have the 86 Japanese Strat. I saw it as a trade up. Yeah, definitely a trade up, Anton. Definitely a trade up. So yeah, that is my Kramer. 85 Kramer. Lots of 80s fun. Now, I'm going to talk about another 80s style guitar. But this one is a little bit more modern. Now, on the topic of sentiment, this was a guitar that when I was young, I knew I needed to own this guitar. So even though when you guys see me in videos, what I mostly play is blues and classic rock, my favourite band of all time is Iron Maiden. They were the band that got me into rock music and made me want to play guitar, and just, yeah, the band that probably influenced me more than anything else. This is the signature guitar from the Iron Maiden guitar player Adrian Smith. Now, this is essentially just a Strat with a few cool mods, but this was a guitar that when I first saw this, I just fell in love with it. It's quite simple really in what it is. It's just a very simple Strat. It's a Jackson, maple neck, maple fretboard. It's humbucker single with a Floyd Rose. You know, what more do you need? It actually has a 80s style Floyd, so as you can see there's no routing under the trim, so it can go up a little bit, but it's predominantly for dives. So yeah, I love this because this is pretty much just a Strat that you can do a little bit more with. Yeah, this was just, for me growing up, I needed to own this guitar, and I finally got my hands on one about 2 years ago, and I've not looked back since. These are pretty affordable as well. These are sort of in the UK around the £400 mark. Yeah, I'd highly recommend checking one of these out if you get the chance. If you're looking for a Strat that just gives you 10% extra, this is a great one. So on the clean channel, it pretty much sounds like a Strat. So pretty standard Strat sounds there. but obviously when you kick on a bit of gain, then this thing comes alive. I do love that chorus sound as well. For anyone who's wondering about the pedals there, the drive is the Wampla Gearbox, which I've got the Marshall in the Box style sound on, and the chorus is actually the Amplitude IK Multimedia X Vibe, which I've not actually done a demo of yet on the channel, but I've had it here for a couple of days now, and yeah, it's a really cool pedal. I'm just kind of getting to grips with it before I shoot a demo. It's from their new X series, which is the algorithms from the Amplitude software put into pedal format. So over my shoulder there, that's the X Space, which is the reverb one. I did a demo of that one last year, and I've got the X Vibe on the desk in front of me, which is the modulation one. So yeah, that's really cool. It's got a ton of different modulations, but I'm just using it for that 80s chorus sound because why not? Anton, is that the Adrian Smith signature model looking at the headstock? It is. Yeah, it's the Jackson Adrian Smith. This is the SDX version. This is the Indonesian made? Indonesian made. The one that sort of retails like £400, £450 in the UK. There is a full USA one. I'm not really sure what the playability difference is. I'd love to try one of the full ones to see what the difference is. But yeah, this one sounds great. The only thing I would maybe consider changing is that I think the pickups sound great, but they do feel a little bit lifeless compared to other guitars. It's not that they sound bad, but I do find sometimes I play this guitar and then I play something else, and the pickups in this, I kind of feel that they let it down a little bit. So maybe at some point I'll swap them out, but they're not bad pickups. I just think they could do with a little bit more, you know, secret sauce. So yeah, maybe I'll swap those at some point. Repping Adrian Smith with the guitar and t-shirt today. I am, yeah. I didn't realise, I forgot that I had this on actually. I'm wearing an Adrian Smith and Richie Kotzen t-shirt. I went to see him in Bristol the other night, and yeah, it was quite cool actually seeing Adrian play in what is essentially a pub, which is quite nice. Usually you see him, you know, playing at in a stadium or at a festival in front of 60,000 people, and we saw him in a pub in front of like 250 people, so that was quite cool. Only ever owned one guitar with a Floyd Rose, never again. Restringing was a nightmare. I'll never go through again. Do you know what, Peter? I agree, but my love of the 80s keeps pulling me back. I actually found this particular guitar, because it doesn't have the fully float-in Floyd, is a little bit easier to restring. I don't want to say it's night and day easier, but I found it was slightly easier. What I did find, when you are restringing a Floyd, the best thing to do is to change one string at a time. So unlock the nut and just literally swap one string at a time, because by keeping the other strings there, you sort of retain the tension. You don't have to completely retension the bridge by taking all the strings off. I know that makes it a real pain when it comes to cleaning the guitar though, and doing any sort of mod work on the guitar, because especially this guitar, because if you want to adjust the truss rod, you have to take the neck off, which again, not ideal, but yeah, it is slightly easier to restring a Floyd when you don't take all the strings off. I do like to take all the strings off whenever I'm doing a guitar, because I tend to give things a proper going over whenever I'm setting something up. But yeah, slightly easier, but I think when you've done a Floyd a bunch of times, you get quicker at it, but it's never the most fun thing. I can't believe I missed that gig, didn't know, and so near to me. I take it you're from that neck of the woods then. Yeah, it was a great gig. It sold out really quickly, actually, because it was in Bristol. It was in such a small venue, but yeah, really great gig. I'm a huge Adrian Smith fan, so to see him playing in that kind of setup was quite special. Obviously, I played this with a bit of drive then as well, but being a Strat, you can do that. Actually, I did play it clean, didn't I? I didn't play it with chorus though, because everyone loves chorus. I do think this guitar sounds great. I know I just complained about the pickups, but yeah, I do like the pickups. I just wish they had that little extra 10% that some other pickup brands do have. They're just stock Jackson pickups, so whatever Jackson put in this thing, they are pretty good. John Channing, I know the... Oh, sorry, you didn't say I know. The Smith Cotton album is incredible. Both of them are great guitar players and singers. They are. They're both... They complement each other really well, too. So that was the really cool thing, was Richie Kotzen predominantly plays more technically advanced stuff, so he's more of a shred guy, and Adrian is much more of the sort of meticulous, you know, his note choices and his sort of phrasing is just spot on every time. So it was really cool to see the contrast between the two, because Adrian is very bluesy and very kind of earthy in how he plays, and Kotzen is just, you know, super technically advanced, and his voice, as you said, is just incredible. They do complement each other really well. And for a lot of the show, they were trading off, so they sort of go back and forth with leads, but they also sang together a lot too, which I thought was really cool, because their voices, even though they're very different voices, they blend together really well, you know. So yeah, what a pairing. I hope they tour that again, because I'd love to see that show again. Perfecto is here, top 5 fries. Hey Perfecto, how you doing? There's a man who knows a thing or two about the 80s, Perfecto de Castro over there in the chat. He's a big 80s buff, just like me. So, top 5 fries. Perfecto and I are always going back and forth on Facebook about the correct terminology for what we Brits know as chips. But Perfecto, being from America, or living in America, refers to them as fries. So it's a bit of a heated subject. Although I think we did come to some kind of mutual agreement on some of it. But yeah, he's definitely wrong. It's definitely chips, and I'm sure all the Brits in the chat will agree with me on that one. So yeah, I'd love to hear some more guitar stories from you guys as well. Obviously, I've gone through 4 of my top guitars so far. I'd love to hear what sentimental guitars you guys have in your collection and some of the stories behind them as well. Perfecto, you must have some. What's your favourite guitar, or your not favourite, but your most sentimental guitar, and what's the story behind it? Because that's what we're talking about in this video, is guitars with a nice sort of sentiment and cool stories to them. And Perfecto has been on the block a few times. He's toured a lot, so I'm pretty sure some of his guitars have some pretty cool stories. So yeah, throw one of those in the chat. Let's hear all about that. And Anton is backing me up there. It is definitely chips. And Perfecto, you missed the 80s Kramer as well. My 1985 Kramer. You'd have enjoyed that guitar. If you're ever in the UK, you'll have to come see that thing, because I think you'd enjoy playing that one. So I only have one more guitar left on my list to go through. So I said I was going to do 5 guitars. Now, the next guitar I talk about, I'm just going to do some rearranging a sec. This is one guitar, but I'm kind of going to talk about 2 guitars at the same time. And there's a reason for that. So I'm just getting them both ready. So, this, out of all my guitars, or my top 5 guitars, is another very sentimental guitar to me. This is one you may have seen if you've watched a bunch of my videos. You may have seen this thing crop up. This is a guitar called a Masquerader from a company called Shergold. So, bit of history on the brand there. Shergold used to exist in the 70s and 80s, like a lot of brands, sort of vanished in time. Then, I can't remember exactly when, but in the last 10 years at some point, the brand was revived. And if anyone's heard of the guitar builder Patrick James Eggle, he now backs these guys. So these are Indonesian made. Then they all get shipped to Wales, where I'm from, but up in mid Wales, a place called Oswestry. And they are set up by Patrick and his team, and then they go off to retailers. So this is quite a new guitar. I'm just running over cables. I've tangled myself up in my chair here. So this is quite a new guitar in terms of age. It's 2018. I acquired it right at the start of the lockdown in 2020. The reason this is sentimental is I associate Shergold with the start of my YouTube journey. So I first met the guys that distribute for Shergold at a trade show in Birmingham, just as I was about to start my channel. So these guys were the first company that I sort of spoke to about making videos and making content. They were the first company that sort of backed me and gave me some support. So I do have a very, very strong love for this company. Even though they're not the biggest guitar brand, a lot of people haven't heard of them. They're definitely on the up, and they make some insanely good guitars. But yeah, these guys were the first company that sort of really gave me a chance. So I really have a huge love for these. This guitar was the one that introduced me to the brand. I found this at a trade show and just instantly connected with it. So this isn't the one that I played at the trade show, because this is actually a limited edition colour of this guitar. So as you can see, it's black sparkle, so it's really cool, great colour. The one I played at the show, I don't actually know if they still have that one, but these were so hard to find that after the show I basically couldn't find one. And then I was lucky enough to basically find one floating around online, and I bought it without hesitation right at the point where I was just getting into making videos. I think my channel had been active for like 3 months when I finally got hold of this. So this guitar is sort of like a hybrid between a Strat and a Tele. It's really cool because you've got that Tele bridge pickup, all Seymour Duncan pickups, Tele bridge pickup with a Tele bridge style. Obviously we've got the brass saddles. The Tele bridge is slightly overwound, so it's quite hot, but then you've got two vintage Strat style pickups in the neck and middle. 5-way switch, so it's literally like a Strat with a Tele bridge pickup, but you can do a huge range of tones. It's got a big fat mahogany neck, I think it's mahogany, but it's got all these cool comfort cuts and sort of shape features to it. It's a really interesting guitar, lock-in tuners. I just love this thing, and it's super, super versatile. So you can hear a bit of bite from that Tele bridge. But yet you can still get the Strat thing. So if I go to like position 4, so it's really, really versatile, and even though it's single coils, you can do a lot with them. So with a bit of bit of drive or a bit of grunt, let's go to the Marshall side of the gearbox. you'd never guess that was a single coil pickup with the amount that it can actually put out. It's got a real fat low end. I think they put a base plate on it, so it's got that little bit of extra kick as well. So I can see Perfecto sharing some stories now. One of my top guitars is my Made in Japan 62 Reissue Strat I got when I was 15 and still with me today. Someone was just talking in the chat about a Made in Japan 57 Reissue Strat. Or not a Reissue, sorry, a 57 Strat from the 80s. So one of the 80s Japanese Strats. I'm guessing maybe yours is also an 80s one. It's never been my main guitar, but it's appeared in all my recordings and is the reason why it's my only triple single coil Strat. I haven't found another Strat that I like over it. I was actually explaining the same thing with my, where's it gone? My 83 Tokai Strat. This for me is like the ultimate Strat that I own or have ever owned. And yeah, I've never found another Strat that I've loved as much as this. I gig a lot more with my Schecter Nick Johnston Strat, but this is like the Strat. If I had to pick a single Strat from my collection to take out and play for anything, this would be it. Even though I don't gig with it as much as the other one, that to me is just the best Strat that I own because it just does everything. It's got all the right sound, all the right feel, and yeah, just that magic. You can also hear in Perfecto's Plexi Ranger video. A Strat and a Plexi is such a cool sound though. I think it's just a sound that really complements each other really well. It's Hendrix, isn't it? It's the Hendrix thing. Brits also drive on the wrong side of the road. We definitely don't. We drive on the correct side of the road. I know you guys in America drive on the wrong side of the road, and I'll actually be experiencing driving on the wrong side of the road because when I come out in June for the NAMM show, me and my partner are actually going to Vegas for a few days first and then drive in from Vegas down to Anaheim. So I'm going to be experiencing what it's like to drive on Perfecto's side of the road, which is the wrong side. So number one, I've never driven on that side of the road before, and I've never driven an automatic car before because you guys in the States love automatic cars. So I'm going to be experiencing two weird things in one day. What are the chances? But then Perfecto, when I'm in LA, I'll come meet you and we'll go for some chips. We actually took Henning for chips the other week, and he really liked them. He didn't even call them fries. He called them chips. But yeah, we converted him. So, you're next. So, I know I said 5 guitars, but you did hear me say that there was a 6th guitar, and this is also a Shergold. Now, the reason I'm talking about a second Shergold is from a sentimental point of view. As I said, they were one of the brands that really kind of got behind me when I started my channel. They were the first brand that sort of supported me and really gave me a push and the backing. And I think I only had like a couple of hundred subscribers. I was super new to YouTube, and Shergold were gracious enough to sort of get behind that and really help me out. So yeah, the reason this guitar is also making the list is this one, the Masquerader, was my introduction to Shergold in this amazing black sparkle, which I've now just probably dented on my desk. But, you know, guitars do get bashed around. This guitar is one called a Provocateur, and this was the first guitar that they gave me. So, and by that I mean, you know, obviously we traded a service there, so I was creating videos for them and I became a Shergold artist, and this was their sort of gift to me for doing so. So this again is super sentimental to me because this was the first guitar that a company gave me for doing YouTube, and this has become not only one of my most sentimental guitars, but one of my favorite guitars to play as well. So this is a completely different beast to the Masquerader. This is visually Les Paul-esque, you know, solid body, and I mean this is solid. It weighs a ton. It's got a torrified mahogany neck, which is kind of like roasted maple, but it's sort of like a drying process. Locking tuners, same deal, Indonesian made, set up in mid-Wales by Patrick James Eggle's team. Humbucker and a P90 this time, which is a little bit more interesting. So the humbucker is the Seymour Duncan Pearly Gates, the Billy Gibbons one, which has a coil split on the tone knob. And then the neck pickup is a Seymour Duncan P90, I can't remember the model. And then we also have this sort of half telly bridge. So we've got the brass saddles. So the reason I love this is because with the humbucker engaged, you can do the Les Paul thing. But then with the coil split engaged, it's like a Telecaster. So it's sort of like the best of both worlds between a Les Paul and a Tele. The Provocateur, no, the Masquerader is 25.5-inch scale, Fender scale. This is like 24.6 or something. It's slightly shorter than a Gibson scale, so it's slightly slinkier, only fractionally shorter, but it's a really different kind of feeling scale. So this thing is a bit of a different beast compared to the last one, so we need some gain for this as well, I think. This guitar has so much clarity, and I've just realised one of my cables is playing up as well. Today's the technical difficulties live stream, I think. Yeah, this is such a clear sounding guitar. I think the notes and the chords just ring on this thing. And you can coil split it for some Tele style tones. So yeah, again, super versatile. It's really nice to have that fatness of the Seymour Duncan humbucker, but then be able to go into that sort of Tele vibe as well. Yeah, you're right, Perfecto, it is quite beefy sounding. It handles like drop tuning stuff quite well without getting too muddy. I think it's just a solid mahogany body. It's quite heavy and it feels quite dense, but it feels sort of dense in the same way that like a PRS feels dense. It's not like a Les Paul that's super heavy. You know, when you pick up a heavy Les Paul, it just feels like your arm's going to fall off. This feels dense in the same way like a Paul Reed Smith does. When you pick it up and it just feels rock solid. Because that's always the thing I find with PRS guitars. As soon as you pick one up, you just think, this isn't going to break, you know. This is going to be a guitar that lasts me a long time. I had a blonde Blackguard Tokai Tele that I absolutely loved. Sadly, I had to sell it to finance our move to LA, and the current owner won't sell it back. Oh, no way. My Tokai Tele is a Blackguard. It's not one of the fancy old ones. It's one of the newer, I think it's probably Chinese made. But I swapped out the pickups for a set of Tone Hatch pickups. Adam at Tone Hatch, who was kicking around the chat earlier on, made me a set of what he calls vintage class A3, which is basically like a 50s Tele set. So it's got that nice Keith Richards-y sort of twang. Was your Blackguard one of the 80s Japanese Tokais? Because if so, I would be very sad to see that thing go. But obviously understandable why you sold it, because you had to fund the move to LA, which I don't imagine was overly cheap to do. Time to abandon chips and the way y'all abandoned the English units of measurement. Well, we didn't abandon the English units of measurement, we just adapted a hybrid system where we use half of the old style measurement and half of the new style. We tend to pick and choose what we want to use there, which is probably not the best way to do it. John Channing, it's great driving in the US. Been there a few times on holiday. The roads are huge and the cars are great. Now, I've never even been to the US, actually. This is going to be my first trip to the States for NAMM this year. So I've never even been to America before, regrettably. I'd love to go, and yeah, I'm looking forward to actually getting out there in a few weeks' time. Or yeah, it's like 6 weeks now, actually. Wow, or no, 8 weeks? 10 weeks? It's not long. Yeah, not long. I'm looking forward anyway, nonetheless. My date-based math is a bit out at the moment because I don't even know what day of the week it is anymore because I'm just too busy to recognize days at the moment. But I'm looking forward to getting out to the States finally. I was actually booked to go in January 2021, and then obviously the pandemic happened. So then it was January 2022, and then that didn't happen. So now it's this June. So hopefully I get out there this time. But yeah, I'm looking forward to actually driving out there. I've never driven in the States. I've never driven on the wrong side of the road before. And I've never driven an automatic car. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. So it should be an experience. The road from Vegas to LA looks pretty straight. So I should be okay, I think. I don't think I'll have too much difficulty. As long as I can get out the city alive, I think the rest of it should be okay. That's beefy, that's pure blues rock and roll. Yeah, this guitar is that. It does cleans, you know, I mean, you can play clean on this thing and it sounds great, especially in the middle position with the bridge split. And for good measure, a bit of chorus. But yeah, where this thing really comes alive is when you crank the gain on it. Put a bit of gain into the humbucker mode, and yeah, this thing just comes to life. I've used it a lot for rock gigs, and yeah, it's just awesome for classic rock stuff. 80s Tokai, the one that got away. Oh, I'd love to get one of the 80s Blackguard tellies from Tokai, because the Strat is just phenomenal. I love my Tokai Strat from the 80s. I think the 80s Tokais, if you can find them for a good price, are some of the best sort of Fender style guitars you can get. The Strat is just phenomenal. I can imagine the telly is just insanely good as well. And we've got a new subscriber as well, Utam Nath. Thank you very much for subscribing. Hope you're enjoying the stream and the videos. We buy petrol and diesel in litres but measure economy in miles per gallon. We do that indeed. And yeah, that is true. We do. That's what I mean. We sort of mix and match which units of measurements we choose. When you drive, keep the same number and just replace kilometers per hour with miles per hour. Now, I know what you're trying to do there, Perfecto. You're trying to catch me out there, because I know for a fact that kilometers per hour, number-wise, is much higher than miles per hour. So if you drive at 70 miles per hour, that's like 100 kilometers per hour. So I'm not falling for that one. I've been to Europe. I know the trick behind that one. In our right-hand drive cars, yes, Anton, they are right-hand drive, and they're correct. 65 kilometers per hour equals 65 miles per hour. I'm pretty sure it doesn't. I'm pretty sure you're lying to me there. I'm pretty sure you're trying to get me done for speeding. 65 kilometers per hour is actually 40 miles per hour. So yeah, I'm not falling for that one. But yeah, we do that weirdly, don't we? We do mix and match between metric and imperial. Don't know why. We like miles and we like litres, but we don't like gallons. But yeah, anyone else got any cool guitar stories before we go off on a tangent about the metric system and imperial measurement? Because I think that could be an interesting conversation in itself. I suspect there's going to be plenty of those conversations when I see you in June, Perfecto. Probably lots of talk about chips and fries and all sorts of other continental crossovers. I think we're going to come up with some new ones, because we had a few interesting conversations about that last year at Gear Street. some of which are still going on, like 8 months later. We're still talking about it. Can't drive, I can't see that comment, can't drive Grammy speed on US highways. Do you mean granny speed? Like super slow? What is the speed limit on the US anyway? In the UK it's 70 mile an hour on the main roads, which for you guys is like 112, which in kilometers per hour sounds really quick. But I need to read up on the rules of driving in the US because I've never done it before, so I should probably learn a thing or two before I actually get behind the wheel in the States, because, you know, I'll have enough to think about with being on the wrong side of the road and all. But yeah, any other guitar stories before we wrap things up, guys? Because I'd love to hear if anyone else in the chat has any sentimental guitars with some cool stories behind them. Obviously, I've walked through my top 5, which was actually a top 6, because why not? So for anyone who's joined late, the whole point of this was sharing some stories about, you know, my favourite guitars, what the story behind them is, you know, if there was anything cool about them. So I've talked about my 83 Tokyo Strat. I've talked about my 2 Shergolds that you've just seen. I talked about my Jackson Adrian Smith SDX, my, where's it gone? My 85 Kramer, and my early 2000s Epiphone Les Paul. That for me was the ultimate sentiment guitar, because that's the guitar that I did all my gigs on when I was young. Hundreds of gigs have been done on that thing. Every tour I've ever done, every recording I've ever made, that guitar was the one there. Hence why it's, you know, beaten to within an inch of its life. But I love it though. That's probably the one guitar I would grab if the house was on fire. Perfecto, back to work for me. Yep, no rest for the wicked. I'm the same. Once we're done on the stream, I'm going to be going back to editing some videos and some audio for the guitar course revamp, which will be coming out in a few months. It never stops. When you're a self-employed musician, it's on the clock every hour of the day, but it's good fun. I wouldn't change it for the world. So yeah, thank you guys for hanging out, talking guitar stories and all kinds of sentimental stuff. I hope you've enjoyed some of the stories I've shared, and it'll be cool to hear if anyone watching this retrospectively has any stories they want to throw in the comments below as well. Thank you guys as always for watching. I'll be back next Wednesday with another stream. There's a bunch more content coming in the meantime. If you want to support the channel and support the stream, there's a bunch of links down below in the description for my Patreon, my tip jar, and my guitar course. So anything you guys do to support the channel comes straight back to me, and obviously it helps me keep making more and more videos, and obviously it's insanely appreciated as well. So thank you all as always for watching, and yeah, I'll see you guys very soon. Plenty more videos on the way. I've got a couple more videos due to drop this week, so keep an eye out for those as well, and I'll see you guys very soon. Thanks so much for watching as always, and enjoy the rest of your evening.